Awesome. Well, thank you all for having me today. My name is Jeff Shelter. I obviously do not have the San Diegan accent. I'm originally from New Zealand. I've been living here for about 3 years, and I've been doing environmental and humanitarian work around the world for about the last 10 years. I've landed here. My wife works for San Diego Coastkeeper, so she looks after the water and the coast and the ocean, and I try and work with communities to look after the rest of it, all of the terrestrial space. I guess my intention of being here today is to really get to know you all, to reintroduce Canyonlands. Some of you may know about us. Actually, who doesn't know about Canyonlands? Perfect. Awesome. So, yeah, my intention is really to get to know you all and to know your group. It's obviously a very activated group. Canyonlands is a community benefit environmental nonprofit, and so we really work at the grassroots to support and provide expertise to communities to be able to protect, promote, and restore, and get engaged and activated within nature, and really realize all of the inherent values that not just the canyons, but all of San Diego's nature has. And so what I want to do today is, it'll be kind of informative. I want to introduce the organization, and then I want to finish up after about 15 minutes with some questions and try and take some questions and activate you guys to think about how you're using your nature spaces. And it sounds like you've already done a lot of thinking in that space as well. So I'm really interested to hear from you all and figure out how Canyonlands can be a supporting partner for you guys as a community. So my name's Jesh. Oh yeah, next slide, please. My name's Jesh. I'm the Development and Projects Manager. When I first joined the organization, I came in as the Assistant Field Crew Manager. I'd been doing a lot of work in Ireland. My wife and I ran a seal rescue center, and we were rescuing and rehabbing marine mammals and putting them back out into the ocean. And we realized that what's the point in spending all this money rehabbing these baby animals when the ocean is being destroyed as we speak? And so we need to think about the root cause and the solutions. And one of those solutions was inland, upstream on intensive agricultural lands, doing riparian or stream bed restoration to prevent all of the erosion and all of the fertilizers from entering into the waterways, which end up polluting the coast and the seals. So I was very, very engaged in the restoration of working with farmers and working with government. We planted almost 35,000 native trees, and we did a lot of work to buffer the streams and to rebuild those ecosystems so that when we're putting the seals back out into the ocean, they weren't just being poisoned and having to come back to us in the end. And so when I came to San Diego, I looked for a group that was doing restoration similar that I was used to. But obviously everything is different here. The culture is different. The language is still English, but it's very different. And there's also other languages here as well. The whole ecosystem is different, the infrastructure is different, and yet there's a lot of similar carryover. There's a lot of the same issues and a lot of the same solutions that can be layered on. And so after about a year in the field crew, I moved into a development position, and for the last 2 years I've been working with the team and the executive director to really build out and understand where is the true value and where does Canyonlands lie in society, and how do we use our infrastructure that we have now to help support community groups to activate and protect these spaces and get people out into nature for healing for us and for the biodiversity and these spaces that we rely on as well. So we actually emerged from a community group in South Park, just down the road, where I live now actually, about 30 years ago. And that group came together to advocate to the city to stop them from paving the canyons as utility access corridors. And they were successful. Switzer Canyon is still a beautiful habitat. Obviously, it has 30th Street running through the middle of it, but there's gnatcatchers, endangered species, or threatened species within those spaces. There's a whole swath of other species that rely on those places as well. And so as they grew from that space, they started working within the city of San Diego jurisdiction. And managed to secure 13,000 acres into protected lands under the Multiple Species Conservation Plan, protecting that in perpetuity. However, there's challenges with funding that. So I'll dive into those, dive into all of that later. Ultimately now, we have a full-time team of about 25 people, Half of them are in the field, 40 hours a week, doing incredible work all across the entire region, helping to reduce fire risk, which we'll dive into in a minute, helping to improve ecosystems, and also to get people active and building careers working with the environment instead of extracting and destroying the environment, which is also present as well. We're expert urban conservationists, and so for the last 18 years, 17 years, since 2008, when we became a 501c3, we have been working predominantly within Choice Creek and San Diego River watersheds, so around this area. And depending on funding, we've kind of moved around different areas and done slightly different work. And over that period of time, we've built a very specific skill set that is hyper locally focused, that takes into all of the complex challenges of managing urban ecosystems. And so now we have this team of biologists and restoration ecologists. Actually, our senior restoration ecologist actually lives literally just down the road. He couldn't make it tonight, but Jonathan Applebaum, if any of you know him, he's in the photo there in the back with the beanie. He is a proud Normal Heightsian, if that's how you say it. And so he's done amazing work for the organization for over a decade. And yeah, we're not landowners. We never want to be landowners. That's not our business model. Our business model, our nonprofit business model, is to support community groups and to support land managers like the city, the county, conservancies, community groups to do best practice in these spaces. And that's the beautiful team we have. Thank you. So our mission ultimately is around connecting people with nature to safeguard both biodiversity and quality of life. So I feel like there's a lot of alignment with what I know about you guys already. But ultimately, we uplift the communities through ecosystem restoration. Workforce development is a huge part of what's made us successful over the last few years. Environmental education and advocacy, and by harnessing the mutually beneficial power of conservation to heal our communities and to heal the lands that we rely on. And we complete our mission through these 8 operational initiatives. And we just recently, about 4 months ago, had our new strategic plan approved. If anyone wants to dive into that, I'd be happy to talk about it. Strategic plans can be very boring, right? We try to bring ours to life, make it nice and short, and really allow it to activate Canyonlands in society to be useful, and to be valuable and to be healing for the community as well. So you can see on the right there, we've got the 4 active initiatives. We've also activated 2 of them on the left already. We can dive into any one of these, but I won't go too deep. Conservation workforce development is really about addressing systemic inequities within the environmental sector to get people that don't have access to working in nature, the training to be engaged in those spaces, hiring from local communities to look after local canyons and local open spaces. Healing with nature is central to our entire mission and vision. It's about bringing people and nature back together. We always have been, while recognizing that we live in modern society, we need all of these utilities. How do we work within nature, and how do we live in nature that doesn't continue to push nature out, but actually that we're bringing nature in and finding a way to manage both increasing populations and the need to safeguard and increase biodiversity in the face of climate change as well. So integrated watershed management, we look at individual canyons, but we also look at entire watersheds. So the San Diego River watershed, for example, for you guys, we see similar issues happening without the watershed, and it takes a watershed scale approach to really fix these issues. Regional fire resilience, it's amazing to see Fire Safe Council in here. We love the Fire Safe Council network, they're incredible. And then there's some others. We've got, deep ties with the Kumeyaay, obviously the original stewards, the ones with the real knowledge. We've just got contemporary knowledge about how to manage these spaces. And so we have active partnerships, we have active projects that we work on that center Kumeyaay practice, center Kumeyaay values, knowledge. And then there's a few others that we could dive into as well. So when we talk about the canyons, we are really talking about something that makes San Diego globally unique, and even within the region, very unique. You look at the difference between San Diego and LA. In LA, there's huge urban sprawl. It takes a lot of people more than half an hour, sometimes even an hour, to get to any type of nature. Within San Diego, no one lives more than 10 minutes drive from nature. But not everyone has access to the coast, right? There's a lot of barriers. It also takes a long time to get there, and you have to find parking, all of those kind of things. But everybody lives 10 minutes to nature, to open space, and that's really incredible. The reason that happens is because we've got these watersheds that basically come from the mountains, and there's a whole network. You can see the white lines on the map there. You've got these major rivers that come down from the mountains out to the coast, and a huge network of canyons that connect them. And so, yes, we're Canyonlands, but we're also talking about the canyons being this incredible connectivity and this fabric that our communities live within. We can't get away from that. So how do we really recognize that value? All of the yellow dots on there, that's the area that Canyonlands, those are the Canyonlands' project areas. So you can see we really work from Camp Pendleton all the way out to Warner Springs, way out near Hakumba, we've got crews working, and all the way down to the border as well. But the majority of our work happens within the San Diego River watershed and the Choyas Creek watershed on city-owned property. So interesting things about this region, which a lot of you will know, but this is a globally important biodiversity hotspot. We're part of the California floristic region, and we also have this incredible, all of these microclimates that create incredible diversity between the border, down into the past the border, from the deserts out to the coast and up into the mountains. San Diego County is the most biodiverse county in the contiguous United States, which is pretty incredible. It's worth knowing, it's worth appreciating, it's worth loving and trying to safeguard those things as well. There's also a nexus of challenges. Obviously, the border is right there. There's contentious. There's a lot of challenge in that space right now. There's the ever-present fire ecology that we live within, but it's getting more and more intensive due to years of heavy rain and then long periods of drought, and then years of heavy rain and long periods of drought, which, if you are a plant, you like the years of rain, especially all of the invasives, they grow incredibly quickly. And then we get 2 or 3 years of drought, and invasive plants, most of them can't handle that. A lot of them might grow 6 to 8 feet tall. They can't handle the summer heat, they dry out, and they become perfect flash fuel, which is a major issue within almost all of the open space areas within the region. We have this incredibly unique mesa canyon topography, and that comes from the rivers and the water that has always flown from the mountains to the coast. Obviously, things have changed over time, over geological time, but our communities are predominantly all based on the mesa tops, right? We've developed as much as we possibly can, and we're continuing to develop and use up all those mesa tops, remembering that that all used to be habitat as well. So we have already created communities within nature, and because of the difficult access challenges of the canyons, we're lucky that they have been preserved. However, as we get into a little bit later, there are ever-present threats, and we see now more and more homes being built and developments being put into canyons, and that continued sprawl happening. And so how do we recognize the need for more affordable housing? I know that's one of your big issues. And also that it's not pushing nature further and further and further out and making our cities less and less climate safe, climate resilient. So Canyonlands has 5 main conservation strategies. We have ephemeral stream and riverine habitat restoration. So ephemeral streams are the streams that we see in a lot of our canyons where they don't have running water all year round. They have water when it rains, and they have water for a little bit after the time it rains. They are the drainage systems. Often they have, the natural hydrology has been used to lay the sewage pipes and all kinds of utilities through those canyons as well. But we do a lot of work within those spaces because that is the main area where water exists. And so therefore plants exist, and therefore wildlife exists in those spaces. The challenge is that often the invasive species are the ones that love the water the most and just really take over. And so we have things like this. This is Navajo Canyon just across the 8 from you guys. We're doing a lot of work removing all of these palm trees by helicopter at the moment, because they are such a massive fire threat. I know you guys are hyper aware of the risks of fire with your history in this neighborhood, and then also with the Halloween fire, 370 days ago, last Halloween. So we do this very comprehensive restoration work that removes the invasives, that goes back through and replants fire resilient native canopies, oak trees, sycamores, the things that are actually very fire resilient. And they provide a huge amount of habitat for all the species that have managed to hold on and use these spaces. We also pair that with upland coastal sage scrub habitats. We have this beautiful coastal sage scrub habitat, which is very unique in this area. That's where threatened, endangered species like the California gnatcatcher, they need those spaces to thrive and survive. The gnatcatcher is the one on our logo. It's often referred to as the bird that saved the West, especially within this area. And we'll get into I think it was actually on the last slide, but we don't need to go back. So the multiple species conservation plan, which was designed, actually, yeah, we'll just go back one. Yeah, so back one, sorry. One more. Yeah, so in the bottom right hand side there is the plan for the multiple species conservation plans. You guys may already be well aware of these. So our one is the multiple species conservation plans are basically multi-jurisdictional legislation that creates this wildlife connectivity from the coast all the way to the desert and creates these wildlife corridors that are essential for the flow of life. And so each of the different regions has a multiple species conservation plan. This one doesn't show the one within San Diego region, but that's because that's already active. The purple, green, and the East County one are currently in development. They were developed 27 years ago. They were incredibly forward-thinking pieces of legislation that protected a whole swath of species rather than what happens in the conservation spaces. We're usually just focusing on one species, whereas this protected the habitat for thousands of species. The challenges with that have been that there was never really enough funding to continue all the maintenance. And that's where Canyonlands stepped in. We worked with state funding to help the city and help regional partners to fill in some of those gaps. Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah, thank you. So then we've got biodiversity conservation. That's a whole range of things from birds to amphibians to plants. And our next big project, which is a really exciting one, that's working with mountain lions, creating a wildlife corridor. You guys may have seen on the news, there's that huge wildlife corridor that they're building over the one up near LA. That's costing millions of dollars. Well, we have an underpass that has mountain lions that have been captured on wildlife cameras. And we are clearing out that entire underpass and building an entire riparian or riverside canopy on the other side so that when those mountain lions come down through the San Pasqual Valley from the Wajito Creek down in San Pasqual Valley, that it's a welcoming entry point. Otherwise, they're crossing the road and really at threat from being hit by vehicles and all kinds of things. Fire resilient wildland urban interface. This is a very relevant one, and so. As you guys are aware, the city has their brush management zones, and any property that the city owns that's within 100 feet to private property, they manage on an annual, pretty much annual cycle. But it's challenging, and we work very closely with the Open Space Division, and we know firsthand that they do absolutely everything they can with the resources that they're given, and they never budgeted enough to do the absolute best. And so what we do is we work with the state, and we've received several $1 million over the last 5 years to come and work on city land and to do that brush management work so that they can use their resources to do additional work elsewhere within their jurisdiction. We also go in and we do it with a specific habitat friendly lens. And so we're not going in and just destroying habitat. We're not going through and just hitting the acres. We see legislation coming down even from the state level that we need to get the acres, so that we're protecting communities. It's like, well, if you go through and you just completely clear everything, you actually create more of a problem. That if there's a fire, the embers are going to come straight through like a bowling alley, as well as soon as it rains, all the invasive species love that open degraded area. And so you create a perpetual maintenance problem. We go through and we do a much more selective, we work with the native plants, we work with the native habitat. We reduce it to 50% coverage with the understanding that after 2 years, those things will grow back and they'll shade out the invasive species that would otherwise grow. So we're thinking long term rather than, hey, let's just keep spending $1 million every year and putting a patch on it. Yeah, next one. Thank you. We can fly through this one, but basically our model really is this reciprocal model for our field crew. And we have about 15 members of our field crew. And then seasonally during the winter, we scale up to a larger crew that goes through a workforce development training program that trains them on all of the skills needed to be an effective environmental leader and effective environmental, and send them on a career path in the environmental space. But ultimately, natural resource funding, so funding for fire safety or funding for mountain lions or funding for whatever to do with natural resources, can support people doing training to be in the space and to learn and to build careers. And at the same time, the funding for workforce development and for education and for community engagement can serve the natural resources across. So we create this reciprocal model where people are serving nature and nature is serving people, and we get double the amount of money by doing that rather than just going after competitive natural resource grants as well. Next slide, thank you. Perfect. And then ecosystems have a similar reciprocal relationship with community renewal. So there's been a massive push for those of you who voted for Prop 4, that is the climate bond. It's a $10 billion bond over 10 years. They've appropriated 3.3 billion of it in this first budget cycle. That funding is all for planning or implementation of climate-related work. So a lot of that is fire resilience work, but also there is flooding, there's sea level rise, there's a whole range of climate and nature-related work. And a lot of that is nature-based solutions. It's looking at how do we not just keep putting more and more concrete into these spaces and actually creating more problems, but how do we start to build blue and green infrastructure into our communities that helps to slow the flow of water so that we're starting to harness the water when it rains rather than sending it out and then being in a drought next few weeks. And also starting to look at fire resilience in the long term as well. So there's a real opportunity for communities such as yours and all of the other amazing communities across the region to engage in these nature spaces as stewards. But also Canyonlands is really interested in exploring different areas where we can build new teams, where we can hire people from a local area that they're coming through, they're working across the entire region, getting lots of skills, but then they're coming to your local community planning group, and then they're the expert on what needs to happen in this local community down the road. Next, thanks. So does time in canyons benefit our communities? How does time in the canyons make you feel? Anyone want to share? Does anyone here spend time in the canyons?
Used to.
Used to? Nice.
Occasionally.
Is it?
I think for me, the canyon space that I'm most familiar with is the Devil's Box. And it seems very close to the freeway, so I don't feel at ease there.
Sure. It's a very good point.
I went to USD, so I was in that canyon
Oh, sure.
multiple times a week.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, that's a nice one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think I've seen your blue
A blue, yeah.
things in there.
We work with the city ranger,
Okay.
Steve, on that. So awesome. Yeah, technology is amazing. So we've been surveying our volunteers and program participants over the last year to really understand, and this is just one aspect of it, but to really understand what is the psychological and health-related changes that happen when people come and spend just 2.5 hours with us in the canyon doing a volunteer event. It's not a huge commitment, it's one-off. And we extrapolate this out through our programming. We've got 6-month internships for youth from Hoover High School, just down the road, and Crawford High School will be starting next year as well. So we can extrapolate out those healing benefits. But it's pretty amazing to see some of the difference, some of the language that's used beforehand: nervous, anxious, curious, sleepy, calm, chill, and then tired. You know, tired, obviously it's the morning when people come along to these events, but then you flip that and then afterwards you're still getting tired. There's still a tired there, but that tired is associated with satisfied, relaxed, helped, peaceful, connected, fulfilled. So many incredible words that really represent healthy communities. And so how can we extrapolate this into this community? That's what I want to lead into the discussion later on. How do we start to replicate that engagement with nature, that people have an opportunity to be out in nature and to heal and to feel part of a community when community action is so important right now. And that hope that comes from community action is critical for bringing us together during challenging times. Like one example of that, thank you, is for us is we about 20 years ago we got funding and developed the City Heights Loop Trail. Many of you may not even know about this. This is a beautiful trail. You know, it's not actually that far from here. You can park at any one of these spots. You can search it up on Google, City Heights Loop Trail. Canyonlands and the city of San Diego co-manage this space. We actually have a $3 million project happening in Manzanita Canyon right now. We're going to re-bioengineer the entire stream to protect it from erosion and then plant a whole bunch of oak trees, and it's going to be absolutely beautiful. So come down and have a look, and then come down and again in a year's time and see how that place is changing. But it's ultimately it's a 4-ish mile 4-canyon walk, and it weaves between the canyons and the streets. So I think, you know, listening to what you guys were saying, looking at these opportunities within this area, are there opportunities? Are there not opportunities? What are the opportunities within Normal Heights Canyons to engage with nature, to heal with nature, to get access to these spaces, and at the same time, do our best to not push nature out of the spaces that we go to see nature. It happens so often we're like, wow, this place is so amazing. Like there's all these trees in this beautiful area, like the Mission Valley, for example, beautiful riparian area. Oh, why don't we build malls, and why don't we build all this development here? Oh, well, we just destroyed everything. And so, yeah, we need that infrastructure. We need malls. We need all this kind of stuff. But at the same time, we push nature out of the space because it was a beautiful space. And so how do we think about that in this localized context as well? Next slide, please. So now let's dial in and make this a little bit more relevant for you guys. There's some maps here. And I mean, you guys will be very well aware of the canyons near you. I think it's important to put this in a setting, and this is just a small snapshot of the San Diego River, mid-city area, and built in there as well. And you can really see how the canyons are this arterial network that weaves throughout our communities. So regardless of whether people go down into the community, into the canyon, we take for granted how much value they add to our society. And so we really work at Canyonlands to help people to recognize that and get out in their local space and be curious and understand how beautiful those canyons can be with a little stewardship. One of the challenges that I looked up for the Normal Heights Canyons, you can see there, it's a little dark on the left-hand side, I apologize, but I've got the APO, the ownership parcels. You can see that a lot of those canyons are very, very segmented, predominantly all privately owned, apart from a few city areas. You guys probably know this extremely well. And so any nature access, any trail building, any restoration efforts within those spaces, there's challenges, but there's also opportunities there. Okay, if there's large landowners, I think there's a faith-related organization within the area as well. If they're interested in healing with nature, things like that, then there's opportunities to work on private land. We can help with that as well. We've got the insurance, we can get communities out and lead those volunteer events. But obviously working on the city-owned property is the easiest. Canyonland has a master right of entry, so we can do a whole range of work anywhere on city property because they know and trust that we have the best possible practices. So it's interesting to look at the parcels and then really like understand, okay, well, what kinds of things does the Normal Heights community want to do in the canyons, in nature? Okay, and then who do we need to start talking to get the permissions to do it? And we can help with that, or you guys can lead the way, and we can be supportive of whatever works best. Interestingly, in the middle map there, that map, the green polygon that's got the hatching, that is the multiple habitats planning area. So that significantly limits any development from happening within those spaces. So that could be a challenge if you're looking at things like trails, but it's really beneficial if you're looking at things like getting the community out to do restoration, to do fire resilience work, because that is part of the multiple habitats planning area. And a lot of it cannot be developed in perpetuity. Next one, please. Thank you. Thank you. So what are the threats? Well, I think you guys know the first one pretty well, and it's nice that you're here. I'm sure you do a lot of work.
Thank you for the logo.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a huge advocate for the Fire Safe Council network. They are absolutely crucial for the safety of our communities and also for propagating information. So it's great to know that you guys do work together in some way. Wildfire is an ever-present threat throughout the entire region, and we're ultimately only 1 or 2 major wildfires away from everybody completely not caring about biodiversity whatsoever anymore and just saying, let's pave the entire canyon network and build, concrete it over. We already see it from the state level after the LA fires and the big fire season last year, is that there's new ordinances to go out and to remove as much acreage as possible. And a lot of the time that's done well, and a lot of the time it's not done. But Canyonlands sits in the space of working at that level to bring state funding down, to bring regional funding in, to try and do the work that's funded through the fire resilience lens and actually make it serve nature and enhance nature rather than destroying it. Interestingly, the biggest issue around wildfire in terms of open space comes from invasive species encroachment. And you've probably already talked about this, but there's 3 major pieces for fire resilience. There's home hardening, by far the best, although obviously expensive. You've got defensible space. Defensible space is your zone 0, which is 0 to 5 feet. You've got zone 2, you've got 5 feet to 30, 25, 30. And then you've got zone 3, or you've got this area, which is from 30 out to 100 feet. And a lot of the time, the space that we work in is that zone 3, where the city owns that property, and they have a mandate under the county fire code to do work in that space. But that entire paradigm of a fire break is really based on backcountry work, and ultimately the issues within our open space areas. If everyone hardened their homes and we had extremely hard communities, that would be amazing. In combination with very well managed private property and landscapes that are ember resistant, they aren't completely moonscapes. There's some combination of ornamental and native plants that are ember resistant and can catch those embers, can be lightly hydrated and not waste water in those spaces as well. And then ultimately it would be nice if we could do best management practices within the canyons, remove the invasive species and the dead and dying species, plants that are within those areas, and try and enhance those ecosystems, look after the soil, and really be addressing the problem rather than just saying, okay, well, here's our last line of defense. So Canyonlands comes in with this model of this holistic model that looks from the very bottom of the drainage all the way up the slopes into people's properties, and then works with the fire safe councils to help advocate on the home hardening piece as well. The really important piece is that we can't just go out and decimate nature to protect our communities, because it's not actually the solution. It might look good up front, but it doesn't actually solve the problem long term. It's just like a patchwork that's going to cause more issues and more costs in the long term. Urban sprawl, not such a big issue in this area, though you may be aware of, I don't know, some developments that are being built. We are seeing a lot over the entire region of private parcels that aren't within MHPA that are being proposed right now for, apartments, 5 apartments going in, 10 apartments going in. I'm not sure if you guys are aware of the Preserve Greater Golden Hill group. They just set up, you may be through the Fire Safe Council. They're doing some pretty amazing work. They managed to get a land developer to donate. It's a fairly small parcel, but it's worth $2 million. He's donating it to the 501c3. He will get a tax deduction. Happy days for him. And he also gets a lot of good credit for doing the right thing and not building a bunch of apartments there as well. So there's some really interesting models about how can communities protect the nature that is so close and so intertwined within our communities as well. And then erosion, you guys will be aware, there's some erosion challenges, and often that happens where the urban interface and the stormwater infrastructure meets the canyon. And as we get bigger and bigger storms from climate change and bigger fluctuations, we get huge amounts of water coming through, and they can blow out the canyon. And so we really need to do restoration. I mean, when you get erosion, like some of the big ones in there, that takes a lot of engineering. But really, where we start to see erosion happening, that's where we need to do restoration, because native plants often have very deep roots, and they can help to secure the soil and make sure that those small gullies don't start to form, because we know in 2 or 3 or 5 years those are going to become new mini canyons, which is not ideal. I can skip over this one, but just there is some incredible habitat and biodiversity. I was out in the canyon just the other day. So that's just near the road. You guys will recognize the prickly pear, the native opuntia. Really important habitat for coastal cactus wren. It's a regionally threatened species. There's also a lot of intact coastal sage scrubs, so there is habitat for things like the cactus wren, our favorite little bird, but also a lot of raptors. There's signs of mammals using that space. You know, there's potential for that to be a wildlife corridor for mammals to come up and down from the communities down into the San Diego River area, or down near those spaces as well. You go in and you see all these signs of life. There's a lot of beauty within those canyons. There's a lot of vibrance and abundance, and with some community stewardship, with some events we can help set up, and we can really make the most of that, and we can lead to that in a minute. I've kind of already talked about this a little bit, but it's also something that we could potentially do. You can see in this image, that's 2 of our crew members. These brown areas, all of that is invasive mustard, wild mustard, which comes from Europe. It grows up very quickly as soon as it rains, and then it completely desiccates and just becomes this incredibly flashy vegetation or fire fuel. And so what happens is we see a legacy of the brush management zones that have been completely trimmed down to nothing. The wild mustard has come in, and then we get this entire ocean of fire fuel. So what Canyonlands does is we come into those spaces and we help to get rid of all of that fire fuel and start to get some native habitat back into those spaces that can actually help with fire resilience. So if there's spaces within your community that you're interested in kind of looking at and addressing and seeing if there's a better way that things can be done, then we're certainly interested in having those conversations with you. And then just to finish up, this is what was the name of the park you said before?
Devil's Sandbox?
Yeah. This is maybe not. Do you know that space?
The end of Collier.
It's on the east side.
On Eugene.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Eugene, yeah, that's
So I think there's a lot of community stewardship opportunities, and then we can bring all of these pieces back together: the healing in nature, activating the community, and being able to get out there together and build friendships in nature, doing something that's purposeful. Going out and doing some biodiversity blitzes, doing some educational stuff around the incredible native habitat that is there and the species that can be found. I saw a bunch of butterflies, I saw a couple of native bees. There's loads of exploration and curiosity, not just for kids, but for people of all ages, to get out, to be in nature, to heal, and to be curious right through our entire lives. So there's spaces like this. There's obviously mountain bikes that go through this space. I'm not sure whether that is permitted or unpermitted, wanted, unwanted. It's interesting though, looking at the tracks. When we look at tracks for mountain lions, for deer, and you always see tracks for mountain bikes and stuff as well. So it's interesting thinking about what is the current usage of these spaces, and what do we want it to be, and how do we encourage the use of it in the way that we want it to be through the way that we engage with the space ourselves. And so areas like this, it's very dry. This could be a really nice community restoration site that we could work with you on if we wanted to. Obviously, we need to do some fundraising, and we need to figure out how to do that together. Who owns that land? I think it's city land, this piece. But there's lots of opportunities to engage in these spaces, not just as a place to visit, but also as a place to get active. And yeah, so there's a couple of questions up there. If anyone has any questions for me, I love your guys' view. I was scoping around town the other day and just really enjoying it. It's so beautiful. I think, you know, some of the value of having those heavy transit ways moving through the community, but then having it buffered by nature, you know, that provides a lot of air pollution reduction, a lot of noise reduction. And so, yeah, that was probably a little longer than 15 minutes, but if anyone has any questions, then please feel free to ask. And
Yeah, I think we'll start right here.
So if maybe you got that from my 2 minute, is I'm really interested in the water pollution from the flow. You mostly mentioned, I thought that was funny, you mentioned the mustard. In the 60s, they planted that mustard after a fire. So because it grows fast and it keeps the mudslides down. And so I wonder if that's the same mustard plant that they were planting, you know, back when I was a kid. But my main concern is they don't sweep the streets here, and it does occasionally rain. And I know that Choya's Creek drains into the Back Bay, and they track the pollution from our streets. So is there any way you could fold in, you know, a little bit more neighborhood maintenance? You did talk about hardening neighborhoods against fire, you know, the residents, and Pacific Palisades was totally unharmed. I'm from that area. But in Pasadena, that was completely residential. Pacific Palisades was like and Palisade is like a hill cliff, you know, there's a cliff, and you know, so those people were literally living in the canyon.
yeah,
And, you know, one of the canyon stands is Carbon Canyon, you know.
ironic.
But are you considering, what I'm trying to talk about, are you considering the runoff that, you know, wild plants are one thing, but, you know, all the pet waste, the car auto pollution, the oil construction, a lot of the homes here were built early and they have lead and asbestos elements. Do you think any about like keeping the street clean, you know, and maybe better trash collection? And
yeah, I think that's a great idea. And you know, there's a lot of work. We're part of the Choya's Creek Blue-Green Infrastructure Coalition. And so there's some really interesting pieces actually in the Mid-City Development Plan. I'm not sure what it is, but you can see some of those elements around creating green communities, but there's also areas where, yes, okay, maybe it'd be better if the streets were swept and all of the pollution wasn't there. But if it does rain, how do we slow the flow of water? How do we dump some of that flow of water into small green alleyways, into trees, into gardens that are built into the mesa and within the communities?
oh, they don't have any storm drains
Exactly.
on the mesa, and yeah, there are areas that form lakes that just soaks down, but it does, through my other work, other people have kind of like attributed the heavy metals and other things that are in Choice to, you know, back to automobiles and human beings living.
Yeah, absolutely correct. And we work really closely with Coastkeeper, who does a lot of that sampling as well. And so, yeah, we've got programs that we're working on. Really, like, there's no point in doing everything downstream where the problem is already too big to fix. And so, how do we look at the entire watershed and right up into the tops of these canyons and out into the communities to start doing lots and lots of small projects which actually accumulate into impacts downstream.
Street sweeping is like a major thing.
Sure.
They used to do.
We have a Zoom participant, Danielle, and then after that, Jim. Danielle, go ahead.
Thank you, Paul. Hopefully you can all hear me.
Yes.
My question, Well, first I'll make a comment. While you were giving your presentation, thank you very much. It was wonderful. I checked the Mid-City Community Plan Ideas Report, which is the preview to the draft report for Mid-Cities Community Plan. And in Normal Heights, the only canyon-ish place that the city is planning to do anything is at the end of Eugene Place. They're calling it a pocket park in their ideas report. I don't know what that would look like, but there is no plans for any canyon trails or anything at the north end of Normal Heights. And then looking next door to the community to the east, Kensington has 3 different canyon loop trails and improvements and all this other stuff. So I would advise anyone on the Mid-City Community Plan Working Group who represents Normal Heights to advocate for more canyon activities for Normal Heights, similar to what Kensington has. And then moving one more neighborhood eastward, you mentioned something about San Carlos getting palm trees helicopter lifted out of canyons. So my question is that on city land or private property? Because it would be wonderful to have all of the palm trees along Montezuma that helped to make the fire go faster up Montezuma on Halloween, get all lifted out. And we already know those are all on private property. So how do we make private property owners more accountable for when fires start on their property, and how can we get those darn palm trees out of there in every canyon everywhere, city land or private land, which it looks like Normal Heights is all private land canyons. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. Great questions, and you're preaching to the choir. I agree. I think, on the trails piece that you asked about, I think possibly, and I don't know the idea, the mid-city development plan enough. It only just came across my radar, and I browsed through it the other day. But I think probably one of the challenges there is how much private property there is. But I definitely recommend, for the group to follow up on that and to advocate for restoration and potentially any trail networks if that's possible. And then on the palm side of things, very good point. We've been eyeing up those Montezuma palm trees for years, and because it's private property, we can't get state funding to do work on private property. It's taxpayer money a lot of the time that we're going after these grants. And ever since the fire, we've been working with the Kentel and Talmadge and Kensington, and there's another one in there, the Fire Safe Councils and the San Diego Fire Foundation, who I think provides some funding for you guys each year as well. Eldorado.
Hills.
Exactly. So we've been working with all of them to try and figure out the pitch. How do we convince, or how do we get that landowner to want to agree to have us come in and, first of all, to get the entry, because that is bread and butter work. We could do that incredibly easily. Remove all of those palm trees, especially, I'm not sure if you've been down there recently, but as soon as they burnt all of the stuff, all of the dead stuff. The palms are perfectly back, healthy and green again. And because there's a lot of light getting into the stream now, all the baby palms have just sprouted up. So there's like about 400 new baby palms that are coming up. So the problem is not going to stop. It's going to get worse again. And so, yeah, we're actively working on that. I think the ones that we've done in Del Cerro, in Navajo Canyon and Ruffin Canyon, and a few others that we've done work in, those have all been city property, and the city is very actively engaged in partnership with us. The Open Space Division and the National Resource Manager, we work really closely with them. I agree. I think, not all palms are bad palms, and I think palm trees are iconic in this region. And so we're not saying that we want to destroy and get rid of every palm, but like the Canary Island date palm and especially the Mexican fan palm, those two are really invasive, and they don't only create a lot of fire risk, but they also choke up the whole ecosystem and cause a lot of erosion and water quality issues as well. So I agree. Let's touch base and let's get the Montezuma palms cleaned up.
Next up is Jim.
Hi, very informative presentation. Thank you very much. And by the way, you do a good job with the language barrier.
Thanks.
Wanted to take the moment to remind folks that there's going to be new opportunities for walking and recreational connection from us on the Mesa down to Mission Valley, the potential anyway. Many of you may be aware of Mission Center Parkway. which is just below us to the north in Mission Valley. And it provides one of the only pedestrian and bicycle ways to cross the Highway 8. At the north end of Mission Center Parkway, the San Diego State University is putting in a bridge. We're going to have a pedestrian, bicycle, and motor vehicle bridge across the river from Mid-City Parkway to Fenton Boulevard, over where the library is. And with that connection, it makes it more important or more reasonable to try to develop some sort of walking path from Eugene or somewhere up here in the mesa down below. I certainly would be in favor of that and wanted people to realize that's another opportunity to have hopefully appropriate use of the canyons. And thank you for your presentation.
Yeah, of course. Thank you very much. Sounds like there's a lot of activity going on in the space. So I'm keen to stay engaged, and if anyone wants to reach out to me, also, yeah.
I was wondering, you mentioned that a lot of the canyon normal heights is under the multiple species conservation plan. Does that mean that, like, would trail development be prevented in those protected areas?
Possibly. It definitely puts some limitations on it. It doesn't mean it's impossible, but it does mean that the habitat is prioritized in those spaces over everything else. But I mean, I do also see that that's not always, that's not always the rule book as well. So
Okay.
I think, yeah, let's follow up on it and see what's the best option for that.
Okay.
I had a question also.
Yeah.
What is the wildlife blitz with iNaturalist?
Say again.
I saw like a bullet point that you guys do wildlife blitz with
Oh, yeah,
iNaturalist. I was just curious what that was.
Yeah, for sure. So, actually, it's kind of in partnership with the Natural History Museum. They do a lot of work with, they record a lot of community science. And iNaturalist is just an app. It's, you may know it for those of you who don't. It's an app where you go out and you take pictures of plants or caterpillars or birds or whatever it is. And if you get a decent enough photo, then it identifies it for you, or else it sends it to a researcher and the researcher identifies it for you. And then all of that data goes into large scale data that helps drive decision making around what species are present in what areas as well. So one of the things we do is train people to use iNaturalist by themselves. Sometimes it can feel funny just going out into nature and just sitting there. That is nice. I enjoy that, meditating or whatever. But like having something to do that is actively purposeful and is like contributing to science and decision making is also really fun as well. It's like that Pokemon Go game that people used to play. It's like the real life version of that. And so there's, people can go out and do it themselves, but also we do bio blitzes. So you might have a community event and, you have 15 or 50 people show up, whatever it is, and everyone goes out and just surveys as much as you possibly can get. And then you come back and you share your results and kind of talk about what you found. And it's a way to help support nature and also to record what's actually happening in the backyard as well.
That's awesome.
Yeah, for sure.
Sure.
I heard you talking about community plans.
Mhm.
I right now am developing our CWPP.
Nice.
You're familiar with that?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, would you be willing to collaborate with me on that?
Yeah,
At least look it over and,
yeah. I think you probably already worked with Morgan from the Firesafe Council. She's, I think, the best resource for that. And I think CAL FIRE is just coming out with some incredible maps and resources.
right, she'll apply all those for me, but I want to make it just, custom,
Yeah.
lights.
Yeah, we can definitely.
So maybe there's something that you've noticed is wrong or could be elaborated on briefly.
Yeah.
She likes summaries, not
Yeah.
longhand things, so.
Sounds good. I'd
I'll
love
get in
to.
touch with you.
Yeah, definitely. Send me an email. We can set up a time and have a look through it. And
Perfect,
sounds
thank you.
good. Awesome. Thank you.
Yes, one more question over here.
Thank you very much. I'm Ellie Oppenheim. And since the topic of trails has come up, I'd like to comment on that. I respect the work that the Canyonlands group is doing broadly. As a former director of recreation and parks for the city of San Diego
Mhm.
and an avid hiker, I'm a big advocate for trails.
Mhm.
However, I do not support developing trails in the canyons between Mission Valley and Normal Heights. I moved here from Bakersfield 3 years ago. when the homeless population had overwhelmed Bankers Hill, left me and my neighbors feeling unsafe around our homes. The homeless came into our streets and when they were living in Balboa Park, just a block away in my case, in the gas lamp, camped out on the streets of Bankers Hill that panhandled. Unfortunately, too many of them also imbibed in alcohol and drugs, and generally they took over the neighborhood. If we open the canyons from Mission Valley into Normal Heights with trails, I'm afraid that the trails and surrounding areas will become havens for homeless people to sleep and to live. A further problem that's been also alluded to in the last few minutes is opening the canyons in Normal Heights creates a serious danger of fires in these deep canyons. I live at the top of one of those canyons on Mountain View Drive. It terrifies me to think that people can get into those canyons, start fires to eat or to stay warm, and that we can wind up with another disastrous fire racing up the canyons, overtaking homes and property in Normal Heights. For these reasons, while I support broadly the work you're doing in the Canyonlands, I oppose any canyon trail development between Mission Valley and Normal Heights.
I think it's a very, very, very valid point.
I actually have, two questions myself. One is, you talked about workforce development. Is there a path in that to CAL FIRE?
We would love to develop one. We've had discussions with them. I think having a lot of our crews hired from within the Choice Creek watershed and kind of the wider Choice Creek and mid-city area. And I think a lot of people that work for CAL FIRE tend to be backcountry lovers, or they live out in those spaces as well. So we're definitely having those conversations and trying to create a pathway that encourages people to go into CAL FIRE or SDG&E or stormwater works, or, you know, that's our ultimate goal, is to have like a 1-year training where you come in, you build up skills to be really proficient in your job with Canyonlands.
Yeah.
And then you could have a track or a training course, hopefully that was university aligned or industry aligned, that would get people kind of specialized industry certification so that they can then go on into high paying jobs.
Okay.
As well.
My second question is, I get that you can lift a palm tree out of a canyon, but you have to free it from the dirt. So how do you get the root ball out of the soil in order to lift it out?
Very good point. We don't. If we took the root ball out, then we would completely disturb the stream bed and cause a lot of erosion, because you'd be ripping out, you know, all of the root system. That would create a lot of erosion. And so what we do, it would also take a lot of additional permitting because you're creating huge grading or impacts to the stream bed as well. So what we do is we cut them off at around about knee high. We go through, there's a whole process. It takes months to set it up. The crews go down, you know, often it's very inaccessible. We flag all of the sensitive species within those spaces. We prep every single palm tree. So we remove all of the dry skirt up to about 4 to 6 feet. So that when the chainsaws come through, we're not going through all of the dry, you know, the palm fronds and everything and creating shrapnel that goes throughout the entire stream bed. Then the palms are felled, chain at about knee high. So you leave the base in the ground and then it's helicopter lifted up by a chain. And it's really quick. They can do about 500 palms in a day if there's a good landing zone within the canyon. So at the end of Leiden Way, for example, in Navajo Canyon was a big landing area for us. And then the whole process of restoration comes back after that. So we're putting in riparian loving species that help with water pollution. We're not here anymore. Water pollution as well as canopy as well. So we're putting in reeds and stuff like that basically grow around, they fill in all around the trunks of or the bases of the palms. And so you're not actually creating any damage to the stream bed, but you're getting out the seed producing palms and the fire, you know, risky palms at the same time.
And the stump doesn't grow back like when you put an onion in water.
No, it doesn't. Once the palms get to about, like once the trunk gets to about 6 to 8 feet, if you cut it off at that level, then the what's it called? Like the apical growing stem, the growing medium is already too high. And so it won't regrow. So only when we're cutting small ones, sometimes what we have to do is just cut an X into the top of it and apply a little bit of herbicide just to kill that middle piece. But any of those big ones, they die straight away. Yeah.
All right.
Cool. Thank you, good.
Thank you. Thank you. At this point, we will take a 10-minute break. Parker, keep us honest.